you do your intro for Ivy League murders.
Let's just do this part.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay. So, welcome back to Ivy League Murders. We have a very special edition for you today. My name is Sarah.
And I'm Laura.
And so, hit it, Laura.
It's not often on Ivy League Murders that Sarah and I get updates on cold cases. This week we heard of new developments on the cold case of William Bradley Bishop, a fugitive who's been missing for 50 years. And we wanted to bring the news right to you, our listeners. We thought we had heard the end of the Bishop case after covering it in our first season. So when dramatic new information came to light, we were transfixed.
As a baby, Kathy Gilchrist was adopted into a wonderful family, the Sidebottoms. Like many adopted people, Gilchrist was curious about her birth parents. At 63, she began a genealogical journey and through an exhaustive DNA search found out that she is the biological daughter of William Bradley Bishop. It started when Gilchrist spit into a tube and sent it off to 23andMe, the genomics and biotech company that tests your DNA sample and reports back what it finds. It can help users find blood relatives, links to their family tree, and learn insights about potential genetic variants in their overall health. Gilchrist has always known she was adopted. It was only as she approached retirement a few years ago that she decided to try and learn more. She was ill prepared for the information that would soon find her. So, who was William Bradley Bishop?
And for those of us who haven't, or those listeners who didn't listen to our first, our, and for those who haven't listened to our first season and our episode on Bishop, Bishop was a Yale graduate and former Foreign Service officer. He worked in espionage and he spoke 5 languages. In 1976, after losing a promotion, Bishop methodically planned and murdered his wife, 3 sons, and mother. He then drove the bodies to a remote area in North Carolina, placed them in a hole, put sand over them, and burned them. Except for a brief sighting in Jacksonville, North Carolina later that day, Bishop was never seen again. This is a case that has eluded authorities for over 50 years.
Laura, when we first heard about the DNA breakthrough in this case, we were very excited to report on this. We never imagined that we would have the honor of speaking to Kathy Gilchrist with new information. Welcome, Kathy.
Welcome, Kathy. This is amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. It is pretty amazing. I will agree with that.
Wow. I mean, where to even start?
Yeah, we wanted to start. How did this incredible journey begin for you?
Actually, as I said, I was getting ready to retire from teaching. I had known all my life that I was an adopted child. And actually I was adopted by wonderful, wonderful people who had great sense of humor. I was obviously quite different from in my personality, in my behavior from the rest of my family, from my very quiet, modest, hardworking parents. I was very outgoing. I was convinced as a child that I was going to replace Shirley Temple. Okay. And so my antics, I think, were a little bit scary for my parents at first. But then, in their typical manner, they said, well, she is who she is, and we might as well just go with it because it's not going to do us any good to try to hold her back. But knowing that no one in my extended family was ever, involved in performing arts or any of them, or actually major academic pursuits, I was always encouraged as a kid to be who I was. So I knew I was adopted all my life. I never really seriously searched for birth parents because I had great parents. And honestly, in the back of my mind, I just had this kind of feeling that maybe I might find out something I don't want to know. Kind of funny how that works, because I did. But in any case, I was getting ready to retire. I had worked in theater. I had worked as an actress, as a director, as a theater educator, um, and I was finishing up my teaching career as an English teacher. And I thought, well, what am I going to do now? And those DNA tests had just come around, and this was 2017. And I thought, I guess I'll take a DNA test, and I'll just go with whatever it is that I find. I'm old enough and mature enough to deal with it now. And I did. And the test results came back telling me all kinds of ethnic information. But there was also a little box that you could check off if you had been an adopted child and you were interested in being connected to your biological family. So I did. In the meantime, there was a little bit of information I already knew about my birth parents. My birth mother had apparently been a chatterbox, and she reported all kinds of information to the adoption agency. She provided a first name for my birth father and a huge description, and gave me a clue about having an older sister and a younger sister. I found out later that the birth father that she talked about was not the birth father who actually was linked to my family tree, and that actually she had had 3 children that she surrendered for adoption in the 50s. I was the middle child, and she managed to keep that a secret from my biological siblings until I came along. So that was the first discovery we made. I was put in touch through the message board at Ancestry with a half sister. She knew nothing about me, but because I was able to tell her the name of our older sister, she finally came around. It was very traumatic for that.
I bet.
Yeah, really traumatic. And I really embrace them. I'm fiercely protective of their identity because they really rallied around me and accepted the fact that their mother had kept this secret for a long time and that we were truly all related. So that was that part of the story. It took a while. It took over a year to put the family tree all together. I didn't do it. I met a biological third cousin whose passion in life is genealogy, and that was.
And her name is Susan. Is that correct?
Her name is Susan Tupper Gilmore. Yes, yes.
Can you describe for our listeners the moment, because you describe it in your book, and your book is very well done. It's not maudlin at all. It's very funny.
And we'll put the link up to your book.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Describe to our listeners the moment when Susan sort of says, "Ba-boom, I found your dad." That's
yeah.
a great moment.
By this time, and it's Susan's favorite story. By this time, a lot of time had passed. Susan had looked and looked and looked, and the funny thing is that we had the wrong guy for a while there, and actually she had to go back to the drawing board. It's not funny, but it's humorous that she thought she had figured it out, and this poor man had passed away. His son consented to do a DNA test, and he said, "Wow, maybe you're my sister." And the whole family embraced me, and that was all great. And then come to find out, once he did a DNA test, that wasn't the guy. So when months.
But can I just stop you for one
second?
second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Susan by trade is a genealogist.
She's not a professional genealogist.
Okay,
she's not a professional. Okay, it's her avocation. What we
Gotcha.
call her an armchair, but she spends it a huge. She's retired. She spends a huge amount of time at it, and she's been very successful uniting people. So it was her favorite thing to do. Um, but then she went. So she went back to the drawing board, and she just sifted through all. I keep saying she shook the leaves on the tree until she finally came up with common names. And she called me one day and she said, okay, you're sitting down? And I said, yeah, I'm driving my car. And she says, nah, well, I have something to tell you, but maybe you should be home first. And I said, nah, come on, I know you have something important to tell me, and I'm not going to wait till I get home, so tell me. And she says, okay, I really found your father. I found your birth father. And so I said to him in my typical outgoing way, I said, so is he someone famous? And she she said, well, yeah. And I said, well, cool. Well, who is it? She says, I'm just going to give you his name, and I'll let you Google him. I said, okay. So she said, William Bradford Bishop. And I had been teaching American literature, and I knew that William Bradford, he found Plymouth Plantation. And I thought, oh, cool. I'm a Mayflower descendant. And she says, well, yeah, but nah, there's more to it than that. So I was meeting some friends for lunch that day, but I got there early, and I Googled William Bradford Bishop, and up popped his FBI wanted poster. I mean, who finds their father on an FBI wanted poster, especially at the age of over 80? So my default emotion is humor. So I just started laughing, and I'm really not a callous person, and it's just awful what he did. And I mean, I can't even go there to think about, poor half siblings of mine that he murdered. But at the time, I gotta say, it struck me as humorous, um, because of course my father's a murderer. I had the most wholesome parents a girl could ever have, and my father's a murderer,
You would
and
fit
not
right in.
just
In
a
my,
murderer.
I would say you would. We call it gallows humor in my
Yes.
family.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
Irish, you find you find
yeah.
wit in every, even in tragedy. I think that's part of
I mean, my
how
parents
we
used
would
to
get
my
through.
my adoptive parents used to say things to me like, "I don't know who your birth parents were. I mean, maybe it was Ethel and Julius Rosenberg. I mean, I don't know, but."
That's right.
So I gotta say, my mother, my adoptive mom, was really into all of this, and unfortunately, she passed away before I found it out. But I said, "Oh man, would she be laughing? Would she be laughing?" Um, so
So
again, I don't want to make light of the situation. He was what he did was horrible, but at the moment, it struck me as funny. So what I said to Susan is, "Wow, I'm going to have the best story at the lunch table. I can't wait to tell my friends."
You
which
absolutely
it,
do.
which is again an awful thing to say, but
Well,
at the
but
time,
what's interesting though, so this takes you into researching William Bradford Bishop.
mm-hmm,
And so tell
mm-hmm,
us sort of, we covered briefly, and we have a larger episode about
right,
it. But so what did you,
right.
and you were not a crime head. You're not a you're not,
No, not at
no,
all, not
yeah,
at all.
so Laura and I, of course, are. So we're, baffled by people who aren't. But so
I know.
tell our listeners, for people who don't know who your father
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
was, can you tell us what you researched him, and obviously went down a rabbit
I
hole finding out
I
more about
did.
him?
I
So
did. Yeah, what I discovered was a very troubled man, a very intelligent man. He
very
graduated
intelligent.
from Yale, highly intelligent, um, with a um, with a lot of ambition and a lot of drive, very much like myself. And it appears, I mean, there's so many theories about him, but my take on the story is that he was very frustrated. He had lived in Europe for many years with his young family, was very happy there. Um, he was enjoying, life as a young diplomat. But then the deal is that when you're sent back when you're given an assignment in the United States, that's kind of, you've reached the pinnacle of your career.
Right.
So he got that call. He was back in the United States, and he had and again, I apologize to people who do this for a living, but he had a desk job that just sounded tedious and boring. It was an important job, but what I learned about him was that he was very active, and he held several master's degrees that he had obtained at different times in his life. He was inquisitive, curious, not particularly social, because there's not a lot of people who say they were his friends. But he obviously was someone who was, leading an interesting life and really motivated by that. So one day some rumors say that he was up for a promotion and he didn't get it, and that set him off. I do know from medical records that he was suffering from depression and insomnia. I did as well at exactly the same age, so I can relate to what insomnia does to a person. But he purchased a mallet, I guess, or the equipment to bludgeon someone to death, and propane and or gasoline at a hardware store. And he went home and he bludgeoned his wife and all three of his sons, who, by the way, resemble me quite a bit. And then when his mother returned from walking the dog, she lived with them too. He murdered her too. And their bodies in a station wagon. And he drove them to this very secluded spot in North Carolina. And he set the bodies on fire. Interestingly enough, I am going up to meet, I've been contacted by the family of the forest ranger who discovered the bodies.
That's
They
amazing.
told me that he was haunted. Yeah, he was haunted his entire life,
Boy.
as was his wife, and even his daughter, who was just an infant when all of this happened. But they're anxious for me up there so they can show me, where that site was, very remote. But they say this had to be premeditated, because how would anyone even know to go up this dirt
Right.
road and do this? But the forest ranger found the bodies. Meanwhile, Brad Bishop kind of took his time and ended up in Elkmont, Tennessee, which is in the Smoky Mountains campground. His station wagon was found there. And he left. That's kind of chilling. He left in the console of the car a prescription bottle of antidepressants,
Yeah.
which I interpret as his way of saying, "Ha! I pulled this off. You figured out who did it. You'll never find me."
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the story. Of course, just horrified me. I think I remember hearing a little bit about it because it was a big deal in the 70s. We'll tell you just there's so many coincidences in this story, and this is one that just really sends chills up my spine. The weekend that my birth father was committing this horrible, horrible, heinous crime, I've been encouraged by my hometown Chamber of Commerce to enter the Miss Stoughton pageant. And
Wow.
it really wasn't something that was a really cool thing to do in 1976. Um, but I was a student at Boston University at the School for the Arts. I was a scholarship student. They knew I had been involved in performing arts. So here I was doing probably the most wholesome thing a girl
Wow.
could do. And my father is murdering the rest of his family.
Amazing.
That is
Amazing.
So, I
amazing.
mean, that's just weird. That's just weird. Um, so then I took it from there, and there's so much about him. And as a matter of fact, this is a brand new twist that just happened today. Um, Suddenly, because of the notoriety of this story, um, suddenly some of my cousins have emerged. I didn't even know. No one on Brad Bishop's side of the family has taken an ancestry test for obvious reasons. Who wants to say I share, DNA with this man? But they found me. And it's really
Wow.
interesting. I had a chat with a second cousin just today, and she remembers. She says, I will tell you, she says, I was quite a bit younger than Brad, but she says, when I learned the word narcissist, I said, that's my cousin Brad. So
Wow.
that's just kind of interesting. They
So,
said, learning about. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh no. So she known him or no?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Because her mother was actually Brad's first cousin,
Okay.
and so she and my grandmother Lobelia, who was Brad's mother. um, Lobelia was her very favorite great aunt and had been her mother's favorite. Um, so they know the whole story. She actually said, "Wow, finding out about you is the bright spot now in what was a really, really dark time in our lives."
I was just thinking
Um,
that. I mean, out of so much
so it's kind of
darkness, and this
interesting.
story it's really nice that you can give some people some give some people some peace, like the family of the ranger and people who don't
Exactly,
know
exactly.
that just your brightness and you have this incredible energy is kind of can bring that to
Well,
people.
maybe a
Absolutely.
little too much energy, but I got that from my father as well.
But I wanted to
Got a
I
lot from
wanted to
him.
I wanted to ask you, I mean, what does it do to you? I've researched this and read about finding, and I have experience with friends who have found birth parents and been disappointed by what they find, and it's really kind of disrupted their kind of identity. And you basically found out the worst thing anyone can find out. And I mean, how does that kind of shift your whole identity into in yourself when you find out, basically your father was a family annihilator, and this is what you found out.
Right. Right. Well, the first thing I really need to do is tell anyone that I encountered that I do not have homicidal tendencies. Okay, I I was a public school teacher for years, and I never wanted to hurt anyone. Um, well, I might have, but I never acted on it. In any case, um, but I mean, honestly, I did teach public school, but um, I'm older. I'm 63 years old now. If and I mentioned that in my book. Had I made this discovery when I was 20, it would have impacted me a great deal.
Right.
And it probably would have changed the trajectory of my life. But at my age, I've had children of my own. I've heard a lot of stories. I worked as a casa volunteer with foster children, um, and I have a huge, huge, um, very strong uh, upbringing. the nurturing that I received, though, that's my mom and dad.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear where the genes came from. And truly every adopted child, has their own feelings um, about their past. Fortunately, I was aware of my adoption through my entire life, and I never thought of it as a negative thing. If anything, I was a little obnoxious about, telling other children that I was chosen, but their parents were stuck with them. Um, there was never any problem with my self-esteem,
I love it. I love
but
it.
I'm fortunate that way.
I
Luckily for me, it's okay. Yeah.
And I love your description in your book of you're this. I just picture you as this really extroverted type of person in this family of very,
Mhm.
New Englandy introvert, kind of
Mhm. Mhm.
humble. Like, what do we do with this kid? But in
That's
terms of
exactly right.
and the in terms of nature nurture, you do in your book make some parallels between yourself and Bradley
Mhm.
Bishop in terms of certain personality traits and that sort of, and obviously
Oh,
not the
yeah.
homicidal. We'll put that aside.
No.
But what you know
No.
when you find out more about him, there are things that ring a bell for you, and some of them are good and some of them are bad. But can you talk about that a
Absolutely.
bit?
Absolutely. The anxiety, the depression, the insomnia, yeah, that's tough to deal with. Fortunately, I grew up in an age when there's nothing embarrassing about that. Actually do admire him for seeking help with that.
Right.
It obviously wasn't enough help, but to try to get that under control. But yeah, there's a couple of incidents in the book that I describe where um, I know how his mind works because sadly mine does too. Many times, I was told by my adoptive parents, if you spent as much time actually doing the work as you do trying to figure out a way not to do, it,
Yes.
you
Yes,
might have had
that
a better
happens.
result. Um,
Right.
Yeah, probably, because I know I talk about, getting busted with a science fair experiment that I
Yeah.
faked. I mean, I admit it, and then but then I had to go back and retrace everything just to save face, and I see that that's exactly what Brad Bishop would have done. Um,
Right.
Yeah.
and that sometimes as a director, of a theater director, I was once told in a workshop that you create more chaos than you need. Why do you do that? And I thought about that for lots and lots of years, and I said, yeah, I do that. And I think I do that because I enjoy the challenge of getting the chaos solved, and then I
Hmm.
can pat myself on the back for it. Well, Brad Bishop did exactly the same. He created chaos. He not only did he murder, which was just awful and a horrible thing to do, but then, I mean, the whole trail of chaos. And then he patted himself on the back at the end and said, "See, I did it. And now find me."
Now, can I
So
ask you?
yeah, I really identified with that.
When Sarah and I were actually doing this story, DNA came up a lot, and I kept asking, Sarah
Mhm.
and I kept saying, why aren't they doing DNA in Europe? And he could have other children, and I'm just curious what your
Mhm.
thoughts
Mhm.
are on. Some people think he died in the Smokies.
Uh, and
What?
and I'll add to that, Laura, if you don't mind. I think this is such an unusual case because like we saw in the Golden State Killer, they traced familial DNA and found him that way. This is totally the opposite. You're innocently giving 23andMe, your
Right.
DNA saying, "Hey, look, I'm trying to find my family," and it turns out to be this guy.
But I'm saying, I mean, this
Exactly.
could this be used as a tool to find him? Could you find maybe is it, you could possibly find siblings in Europe, and we could find out where he's been all this time.
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
do you or do the police see that as maybe a way to track him down?
It's interesting. I did contact the FBI right away because I'm a good citizen, and I thought, they've got files on him, and I said, "Hey, this is what I have reason to believe that this is true." And I also contacted the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department right away. Um, and they did follow through, but what I asked for is, do you think that my DNA can be compared to DNA from the crime scene? Just to verify, just as the last, the missing link. And they've they've only responded in a sort of vague way that, oh, that might not be legally feasible. I'll be with you, I don't understand that because it seems to me that it would be helpful. There have been, I spoke with a reporter um, who did an in-depth report for the Today Show about 10 years, and he couldn't wait to get in touch with me and share his theories with me. He believes, as I believe, that Brad Bishop went to Europe because I think that
I
would
believe the
be
same.
easy for him.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, the thing about and he asked, "Do you think he has any children?" I said, "Well, looking into what I know about Brad Bishop, that wouldn't surprise me a bit. I'm sure he has other children." Um, but you know what? DNA is not a big deal in Europe as much. It's not because of the geopolitical structure of Europe. There's so much intermingling between cultures, because all those countries are so small, and we are a nation of immigrants. So that's why our fascination in America is far, far greater than their interest in Europe. Also, there's still they still have different attitudes about, sexual habits and things like that. So, yeah, I think I could be of help. I was actually told by someone from the sheriff's office that I really am of no help to them in finding Brad Bishop. I tend to disagree. I think that maybe there are other relatives. There are possibly other children, but as I said,
Absolutely.
there's so many moving parts to this story, and it's still developing as I'm discovering other people. I was given the phone number of no, I wasn't. I was just given the name, and I think I'll probably be able to be in touch with Brad Bishop's college roommate
Wow.
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 to be able to
That's
shed some light on his behaviors.
interesting. Now I'm curious because when did you wrote this book? Um, when did I'm just curious because this story really just broke, correct? But you had previously
It
written
just
the
broke.
book.
The book was just published. Yeah, well, you know what? I started working on the story in bits and pieces just because friends kept saying, you need to write this down because they were starting to lose track of this information. And I'm one of those people that, like in the back of my mind, if I'm going to start something, I didn't have a good reason. I had retired. I had no good reason not to do it. So it was. I'm not a very sedentary person, so it's hard for me to sit down. But I wrote it. I wrote bits and pieces, and then basically the pandemic is what got the book finished because I had time.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? Hey, let me see if I can finish a book. Um, Editing, took months and months and months, but pretty much fleshed it out by I really started bearing down on it as soon as the pandemic started, and it got published in November.
So
And
why do you
So it
think
is
all of
a
a sudden,
relatively new story.
but really within the last week, the stories just exploded, and I'm wondering what made it all of a sudden
Um, First of
explode?
all, this the beginning of March marked the 45th anniversary of the murders,
Okay,
so it's timely. It was 45 years ago, and as I say, a local reporter here in Wilmington, North Carolina, drove down and interviewed me about the story. She broke it, and I'm really proud for her because she did a great job, and she edited that interview. She zoomed with her story together and had it on the 5 o'clock news. So the news hit, and then it went viral. Other stations picked it. As I say, there's been a lot of press on William Bradford Bishop.
right. So your
He's a
phone's
cult
ringing off
figure
the hook.
in
Yeah,
in some among. It
and
kind
now
of is. I'm a little bit
yeah,
overwhelmed, but yeah, yeah. It's yeah, I don't way as you know, and yeah. Fortunately, I just got your number because when you said you had messaged me, I said no. But what I had done is because so many people are getting in touch with me, I missed a whole bunch of messages that were like behind the other ones. So
I
that's why I
see. I see.
finally
And,
found you. I said, well, I'm so sorry.
mhm.
I try to respond to people. I'm going to be on Good Morning Australia, which is so
Okay.
weird because we're taping that at 5:50 tonight, but it will already be Tuesday morning in Australia, and that just makes my head hurt to think about how that works. So,
And can I
yeah.
can I ask you? I mean, I know, I'm sure when you think of your father, you think of your adoptive father because he was your father. But when you think of
Right, right.
when
Who
you
was wonderful.
right, and but have you come to some type of peace with it? I mean, you seem to be, you don't seem to be bitter or angry. So, have you come to some type of a peace with
No.
this where you just that you're able to just kind of accept who he was as your father, but
Mhm.
kind of let go of it a bit?
Oh, yeah. I'm able to remain detached pretty well
Mhm.
from the whole story. I'm fascinated by, looking at pictures, looking at our physical relationship, and interestingly, the cousin I spoke with today, who grew up with Brad, said, "Oh yeah, you have his eyes, you have his chin, you have his mouth."
Wow.
And they will, if they pop up, they are now taking ancestry DNA tests, and
Right.
if the DNA matches, they will pop up, and then it will become conclusive.
Wow.
So I'm hoping that happens.
I
Um,
really do.
the other
I do.
the other interesting thing is, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm so sorry, Kathy. We're just so excited. We don't mean to like step on what you're saying, but this is just so exciting. The
The
whole
thing
No,
is,
it's okay. It's okay.
it's so thrilling, and your attitude is so phenomenal. And
it is.
I think this is just
Absolutely.
like the first domino to fall. I think other people are going to start taking DNA tests, and I think this potentially could lead to, he may be passed away by now, but I think this could be really lead to finding out where he lived his life all those
I
years.
agree. I agree. But and
And
I
you may be the key to that.
and I
It
have to say,
could.
I do see a family resemblance definitely between,
Mhm.
between
Mhm.
you pointed out in your book that you have certain facial features that are similar, and I see it definitely.
Yeah. 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 Those half brothers, little round-faced, blonde-haired, straight
Yeah.
blonde-haired boys. They look just like me. It's scary. But the most important thing I think about DNA is these tests. You do need to be careful because, that
Mhm.
old adage, be careful what you look for. I know you've probably heard as many stories as I have about people discovering, their fathers are not who they thought they were, and family secrets are,
Sure.
revealed, and that's emotional. That's traumatic. It's not just, this story is not just all about me. It's about other people who are involved. And once again, I'm dragging, I did experience some guilt, a lot of guilt about dragging these half siblings of mine into this story
Mm.
because they didn't ask. They didn't ask
Right.
to be dragged into it. They didn't ask to have to try to, wrap their heads around their
And
mother was doing.
and
So
and,
I
and
try
that
to be compassionate about it.
that was one of the questions that I had for you. Your birth mother, Louise, she never kind of knew that you were on this quest, or
Mhm.
did she find she you never got to kind of talk to her about
No,
Brad Bishop?
no.
You That must be
Mm-mm.
frustrating
No,
for you, I
because
must say.
because it was closed. That was
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I accepted it. I accepted it because she gave me life and she gave
Mm.
me to an adoption agency, and I had a wonderful childhood. So, thank her. I always said that the only thing I really wanted from my birth mother was to tell her thank you. And she did that. It's not my job to judge her. It was a different time, a different place, a different era, 1957. A lot of things were going on. So,
Wow.
and
Have you
she never, ever gave any inkling.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
You're very, very remarkable.
in absolute have you heard any other anecdotes about their relationship at all? Was it a casual fling? Was it a, you know, have you heard, do you know
Nobody
anything
knows.
about how they got
The
together?
I suspect it was just a drunken frat party. That's all I can imagine. Because when I talked to Michael Austin, who had done some, some work, he said he interviewed Brad's roommate, and at that time they didn't know anything about him fathering a child, and Brad really wasn't into the dating scene. Brad had a long-term relationship with the woman he finally married, his hometown
Right.
girlfriend. But I mean, seriously, she was in California, he was in Connecticut.
Right.
Um, but he did mention that one time they went to Cambridge in their senior year, but I think he might have gone to Cambridge before his senior year. I don't know. The other the other the other thing that we were actually talking about, my second cousin and I were talking about, is Brad did drop out of Yale for a year. He took a
Right.
year off, and he left Yale in May of 1957. And he went back to Pasadena. And I was born in June of 1957. So,
Interesting.
I'm trying to connect those dots. Did he know? Um, my cousin said, this cousin said, well, if his parents knew about it, they kept it very, very, very quiet. Um,
Mm.
and but she believed it was, that was possible. She said he was in Yale, and then all of a sudden he's home.
Mm.
And then he went back and finished.
Right.
So, whether there was a financial transaction that took place, I don't know. I'm just speculating at that. I'm just putting putting pieces together.
What's amazing about this story, about your story, is that I think there's going to be, as Laura said, I think it's the first domino that's fall. I think we're gonna hear more as this story develops.
And I hope you'll
you
keep
know.
us updated.
It'd be great,
to know.
Oh,
what's-
absolutely. Absolutely.
And what's next for you?
Yeah. As I say, things develop. Let's see. um, well, book sales are doing pretty well. I kind of laugh because they keep sending ebooks to Japan. So I guess they're reading the story in English. I am working with the Tamron Hall show. If you know Tamron Hall, she used to be, yeah, they actually are looking at it's a show that that will air, I think, on Thursday because they're taping it Wednesday. On long lost family secrets and the forgiveness that has come out of it. So they're, I think, focusing more on. Yeah.
And before we finish up, and can you let our listeners know how they can find your book? What the name of your book, so that we'll post it obviously on our social media.
We'll put up a link.
But
then, how can
I would
people
be
get
more than happy.
Okay.
Sure.
Tell our listeners.
Sure. Yeah, it's the name of the book is It's in My Genes, Genes. There is another book by that title, so you have to look for the one with the really pretty cover. It was the publisher who designed the cover. I said, I don't, or she said, I said to her, our double helix is really boring, and then she shot back this cover to me. I said, oh no, they're pretty. But it's called It's in My Genes. It's available right now on Amazon in ebook and paperback, and it's available through, I think, online through Barnes and Noble. So and there were a couple of little errors that snuck by myself and the editor, but they're being corrected. So
it's really a good read. It's not maudlin at all. It's very funny. I love the description of your adoptive family. It's really a pleasure. You're very funny.
You're wonderful.
Well, thank you. You got to keep a sense of humor.
Absolutely. And we're going to post all the links on our social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We have a great Facebook group, and they love to read what we're reading and what we encourage them to read.
Absolutely. And just on a final note too, I really think there is a lot of value that you can bring to the case. I would say that this is the first break in a very cold case that's gone cold for 50 years. You have half of this man's DNA.
I agree.
And I think this is very valuable in terms of trying to figure out his path from
North Carolina.
From North Carolina in 76.
I don't think this is the end of it.
No, I don't think so either. And we're,
So Kathy, thank you so much for taking the time out. I know this was super. I mean, we literally
thank you for having me. Obviously, I'm a talker. When you said we want you to feel comfortable, I was like, "Oh, I can talk."
Oh, from reading your book, I was like, "Oh, please, Laura, and we're all talkers. We can all talk the paint off the wall." So we're
and of course, I love Boston.
Yeah,
love Boston.
Wait, but
my students used to say to me, "Go ahead."
Oh no! Has this turned you into a crime head? And I just
a little bit. I gotta say,
say
a little bit. Yep.
You've caught the crime bug. Yep. And your roommate at BU was Gina Davis. Does Gina Davis know about your
I haven't heard from her. We haven't talked in a while, in like 20 years. So but I've talked to her before, but somebody said to me, I'm surprised her publicist hasn't They have software that picks up her name. But the funny thing is a friend of mine just here in my neighborhood, and I think she would laugh, but here in my neighborhood said, I just have one question for you. I finished the book, and was Gina Davis really your roommate? I said, would I have made that up? I said,
After
no. I said, but
everything
I
you
can
just
see her.
heard.
She's after everything. But I thought, oh, what this book needs is a famous roommate. No, of course she was. I said, but
Well, but what I love is that you discover that your dad is this infamous murderer, and that's the part that she goes to is like, your roommate
exactly.
was really Gina Davis.
I said, why
Your
on
roommate
earth?
was
Why
Thelma and
on earth?
Louise.
Yeah.
Well, I bet you're going to hear from her
Exactly.
soon. Don't be surprised if you
That
don't get
could
a
be.
hour
Hi,
or
Gina.
anything.
Hi, Gina. The last time we talked was on a radio show. So there you go.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah. Hi, Gina.
Well,
Kathy, what a pleasure.
Thank you
Totally
so much.
fun.
We hope you'll come back and give
Yes.
us an update.
Well, thank you. It was
More.
great. We had a great time. Yes.
Yes, the best.
I will.
Thanks again,
I will. Well,
Kathy.
now that we finally made contact. Yeah.
Yes.
You take care.
You
take
too,
care.
Kathy. Thanks a
Kathy.
million.
We'll send you a copy when it's done. And
Great job, you guys.
We're going to put it out tonight
Okay.
as breaking news.
Thank you, guys. All right. It was great.
Yay. That was
Thank you,
great.
talking
Thanks,
with you.
Kathy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See ya. All right.